if I take myself back to 2016 when I attended my first meeting, I just had a gut feel this was a good thing. Oh, absolutely, I was intimidated. The sort of more experienced Toastmasters in the group, which was, I would probably say, two-thirds of the club at that point, seemed just really eloquent and easy on their feet, just speaking. I thought that would be nice.
I don't know a lot of people with your specific background. It's very unique and very specific to you.
Mhm.
Is there something, a part of you that you feel like craves the adventure, or craves the busyness or activity of different things or experiences that call out to you? Toast and tea, where we have all the tea, tips, and stories, here to inspire you. Hosted by Little Norway's Toastmasters. Semper Gumby. That is a phrase I learned from an associate with today's guest of honor, Lucia Lara. Having a diverse background, Lucia was born in the UK, raised in South Africa, was an exchange student in Argentina for 1 year after high school, and worked in Cape Town, South Africa before she came to work in the US. Talk about traveling adventures. Unable to decide on a career in music or something medical, she chose occupational therapy and has been passionate about her work while keeping music a very strong pastime wherever she's lived. In 2016, she transitioned from working as an occupational therapist at a large healthcare organization into the private sector. Her field of specialization was sensory processing and challenges and child development. She was eager to share information that could reach a broader sector of the population who could use it. Having no idea what that would look like, she decided that gaining confidence and skill in presenting made sense. After a friend invited her to attend her first Toastmasters meeting at Little Norway in October of 2016, she soon joined and became an active member of the club. Toastmasters aided in her leadership and speaking skills. She's had opportunities to present at local community groups, online forums during COVID, and at in-person regional and virtual conferences. She's also supported local arts organizations in developing a companion program to increase access with support for individuals with physical, psychological, or sensory differences, and developed the associated training for staff and supporting companions. Lucia, Semper Gummy, which means always flexible, truly
Yeah.
fits you and your involvement in all that you do. Can you tell us more about yourself? And we would love to know, what is your secret?
What is my secret? Wow. I think adaptation, probably. Having lived in different countries and especially as an exchange student as well, going to a country where initially I had studied zero Spanish prior to going. I had done French in high school, and in South Africa at the time, one had to take English and Afrikaans, which were the two national languages. So I had to do those through high school, and I'd taken French in high school. And I think having an appreciation for just different languages, I've always been passionate about learning about different cultures with people. Um, as you heard, I love music. So not only the cultures, the people, the language, the foods, but also the music that accompanies, I think is a really strong part of my journey. And adapting to where you are, and really just through osmosis, for lack of a better analogy, is just kind of absorbing as much as I could to enrich the experience of the culture, of the people, and adapting accordingly based on where I was. South Africa itself has a very interesting and broad history with it's a cultural melting pot of its own, including, you know, communities or cultures, nationalities that have settled there, but also within the local population, you have people of different sort of African groups, be it Zulu, also there's about 13 different ones. And then people who've developed, well, groups of people that have emerged over the time from the people, you know, joining together and new generations forming. And Afrikaans is a language that is widely spoken by initially the Dutch settlers, but has morphed into this language, which is now used by all the groups living in South Africa. It's still very similar to Dutch. It's kind of like Flemish. So at the time, I hated learning it at school, but it's kind of cool to have that language now when you can appreciate it from a different standpoint. And I think another bit of the Semper Gumby, which is sort of a play on words from the Marines, Semper Fi. My husband's a retired Navy officer, and so we moved a lot. And again, you have to be flexible, you have to adapt, and you're just used to change and making the most of it and seeing it as a positive thing, not as a negative thing. And when you adapt and settle in different parts of the country and the world, because we have lived on Guam as well, it's like, wow, this is really cool, and seen as opportunity in terms of getting settled into and embracing new cultural ways, broadening your kind of even your family, because they become like your Navy family. When we first got married, the address book was fairly short, friends and family from my own, and then it's just got longer and longer and longer. And now in the days of virtual, say, Christmas cards, I'm not mailing out quite so many, but there was one point where there was a really large stack and everyone writes like a letter, which is like, this is what the family's doing. And it just becomes the broader family. So that's sort of the long answer to the question about adaptation. It's kind of all part of what it is. Adapting to the US as in my 20s when I came here, and then getting married into the Navy, which was a completely new transition and adaptation in my life. But it's been a real blessing, and it's been an adventure and the source of many stories, some of which have been Toastmasters speeches.
I love your sense for adventure. I feel like it really comes through in your speeches. I don't know a lot of people with your specific background. It's very unique and very specific to you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there something, a part of you that you feel like craves the adventure, or craves the busyness or activity of different things or experiences that call out to you?
Right. That's a good question. I think I've always had an intense curiosity about certain things, and it's one thing to read about it in a book or watch a movie and a documentary, but there's something else to go there and experience it in the flesh, as in real life. And an example of that is when I was going through the interview process with the exchange program when I was 17. I always had this fascination for Latin America. It's just something, seemed like this continent that I just didn't know much about. Really wanted to go and see, how do the people live? What's the culture like? And so when I went through the process where you get a big page of sheet of paper, and there's 3 columns of countries on there, and you get to check off, would like to go, would not like to go, don't mind, and then you list your top 3. So I did that, and then my top 3 were Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. And at the time, Brazil had sanctions against South Africa because of the government and the apartheid at the time. And I ended up getting Argentina, which is great. On a comical side, when I was in England still at age, I think about 5, one of my teachers wrote in my report card, "Can be naughty unless kept fully occupied," which I laugh at now, because I think, well, maybe she had a whole lot of insight then. And so I joke about, well, I've just been keeping out of trouble ever since. But I think it's also a real intense curiosity about cultures, about people, and just embracing experiences and opportunities as they come along. And again, it's one thing about reading about it or watching a documentary, but actually experiencing it makes it so much of a deeper experience as well.
Did you find, so you chose to intentionally in 2016 join Toastmasters because you noticed that you wanted to acquire certain skills.
Mm-hmm.
Did you find it intimidating in any way at first?
Oh, yes. Right. I mean, I went there, I was a guest for about a month. And then I was like, this makes complete sense. From a professional expansion and growth perspective, it makes sense. Oh, absolutely. I was intimidated. The sort of more experienced Toastmasters in the group, which was, I would probably say 2/3 of the club at that point, seemed just really eloquent and easy on their feet, just speaking. And I thought, that would be nice. And it looked like a pathway to do that. But also, what I've learned since is, pathways are means of telling one's story. And like you say, you know, my background is somewhat unusual. And maybe it's a way of finding a voice, how to succinctly tell my story or stories that have happened in different chapters of my life and share them in a way that's it's kind of fun to consolidate one's thoughts and ideas, and also think about, well, what did I learn from that? Like, what's the so what of these experiences, and how did they mold me into who I am and my worldview and that sort of thing. I think it's really neat. I like that aspect of Toastmasters as well. And on the professional level, like you said in my introduction, when I transitioned into the private sector, I really had no idea how I would get to maybe share certain information which would potentially be helpful to broader groups within the community, with instead of or as well as working on one-on-one with clients. And I didn't know what that looked like, but it has really morphed into the opportunities to share and present at local and broader events, and that's been great. Yeah.
Do you feel like you noticed this distinct difference in your ability to overcome, I don't know, what was it nerves for you? What was it that was like particularly intimidating about presenting in front of a group of people that Toastmasters helped you to overcome or transition into something different?
Right. I think Toastmasters helps one, you know, find your voice. I know is one of our find your voice, share your story. I think even though I knew I'd experienced a lot and had a lot to share, getting up and sharing it, thinking people really want to hear this, you know, it actually, people want to hear what I have to say.
Mhm.
So I've gained confidence in, again, realizing what experiences well, I know it's interesting for people to listen to, because people have given me feedback. Well, that was really neat, and how unusual, you know, that different aspects of what I've presented on. So I think for me, it gave me confidence in that. Yes, I have some pretty solid stuff to share and personal experiences that people find interesting. So it was a validation, I think, a validation and an opportunity to feel more confident doing so. Yeah.
I think that's so interesting how people feel like we need permission to tell our stories.
Right.
And it's like, okay, unless you have a format where you're able to do that, it feels odd or awkward. It's like, I don't know if I'm here, I want to talk about myself right now, especially in front of a group of people. It's like, and it sounds like you were able to, like you said, you gave yourself that permission. You finally gave yourself the permission to like, yes, I can talk about this, talk about these experiences, and people can, or will find something to relate to in this story, in this speech.
Right. Absolutely. And on a professional level, you know, as an occupational therapist, we have to do a certain amount of professional continuing education credits every 3 years. And I've attended seminars and presentations the entire time I've been a professional occupational therapist. And as an attendee, it's like, yeah, you know, they certain things. But now I've been in the profession for over 30 years, starting to realize, you know, maybe there's something I could contribute and present as well. And this has been something like in the last 2 to 3 years, that like the state organization calling for papers to present at a state conference, and submitted one, was accepted, presented, got great feedback. I'm like, you know, maybe after 30 years and the experience and such, this is where I am. And again, validating one has information that people want to hear, and then having opportunities to present, it's wonderful. And the Toastmasters piece just adds to one's level of confidence and comfort in doing so. Yeah.
Right. I love how you talked about how you had that naughty disposition when you were young. I feel like my nephew is sort of similar. We're watching him right now this summer, and he's very similar. Like he has so much energy to give, but when he has an activity or you're present with him, he focuses very well.
Yes.
And gets, so I'm hoping maybe that's where he puts his energy as he gets older, is he finds a way to be productive with it.
Yeah.
So you actually helped me to, you actually wrote this introduction. I modified it a little bit, but I want everyone to know that the introduction that I gave at the beginning of this podcast was written by Lucia. And introductions is something that you learn how to do or refine when you're in Toastmasters.
Right.
Do you want to talk about
Yeah.
that experience or how that works for you?
Oh, writing introductions. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. When one's doing a speech, well, of this specific introduction or just in general?
Both. Yeah.
Both. Okay.
Both.
Yes. Well, when one's going to be introduced, typically one's looking at, okay, who's the audience and what do they need to know about you without giving your speech ahead of your speech, but to just give you your background so they know where you're coming from is helpful. Within Toastmasters speeches, it kind of depends on the speech as to how you want to introduce it. You want to sort of give a bit of bait to hook people into like, oh, what's she going to actually talk about if you give it some sort of wacky name, to the speech kind of thing. Or sort of whet people's appetite. Well, this is a little glimpse into the life of, but let's see how it impacted years ahead or something like that. So I think introductions depends on what you're talking about, the group you're talking about, to keep it somewhat succinct, to give a broad idea or whet people's appetite about what's to come without giving too much detail. For that.
Yeah. I first learned how to write introductions through Toastmasters, and I feel like it gives that polished feel to a speech or an experience.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I thought you did a wonderful job of describing your experiences. And an introduction is typically where you want to take the opportunity to talk about and basically brag about yourself.
Brag about yourself. Uncomfortable at first, right?
Yes, very. You want to brag about yourself, or I think when people would introduce me, they would say, "Oh, this amazing," or "this esteemed," or they would use words like that, and I would be like, "Oh, okay." Like when I go up and I do this speech, I want to sound extra
Yes.
professional and in the zone because of the way that they introduce me. So I love introductions.
Right. And I think that goes back to that whole validation point. It's like, yeah, I do have something to say. Yes, I do. But initially it was uncomfortable. If we're talking about ourselves and that sort of thing. I mean, if it's on a topic, on a sort of research topic, that's a bit different. But talking about ourselves, just framing it in a way. And I think it's an open way of sharing one's story versus bragging. It feels like bragging initially, but then it becomes, this sounds polished, right?
I mean, it's just facts.
Yeah, right.
That you did this and you did this and you're a part of all of these experiences.
Right.
I want to honor the time. Let us end on this final topic. Is there something for an incoming person who's interested in Toastmasters? What piece of advice would you like to offer to them or let them know about Toastmasters?
Right. Absolutely. Well, Toastmasters, the way they sort of sell the program, which is absolutely on point, is it's not just about speaking, but it's about the leadership piece as well. And I can speak to that because aside from getting more confidence and feeling validated as someone presenting information or sharing my story, as one gets comfortable in that and one gets into leadership roles within Toastmasters, one gets comfortable working on a team, delegating tasks, working collaboratively towards tasks, and it really is a fantastic opportunity for communicating as well. And that, though, all of those skills translate to the workplace. And then one gets more comfortable. The arts organization I helped, for example, that was absolutely the epitome of collaboration, communication. And during that time, it was coming out of COVID. So when one was developing trainings, I was developing trainings with PowerPoints, but I had to do them in person, virtually. Some people joined the trainings because they were in the UK at that time. And Toastmasters gave me the confidence and skills on a virtual platform to present like that, to present in person, the opportunity for collaboration and communication in the entire process, which required presenting. So it was everything together. And again, if I take myself back to 2016, when I attended my first meeting, I just had a gut feel this was a good thing. And it was a positive something that would, again, I didn't know how it would impact my life or how this would transpire in terms of sharing information with a broader community. It just felt good. And I do work on intuition quite a bit. So if I'm in a situation and I'm intuitively feeling this just feels right and it makes sense, and making decisions and like making the next best step forwards because it makes sense and it just intuitively feels like the right thing. So I do rely on my gut quite a bit too.
Wow.
So
I
I'd
would
say to any new person contemplating Toastmasters, there's only so much to gain. And then there'll be the people involved, the people you meet along the way. It's just wonderful too. You never know what you're going to learn. And you meet people from so many different walks of life and different cultures, different jobs. I remember the year I was serving as the area director, attending groups from the broader Olympic Peninsula area, and just the speeches those people made and learning so much about them and their life stories. And I always find that fascinating too. So it's just wonderful. There's so many layers to gain from joining a Toastmasters club. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned that you served as an area director for a year, and
Yeah.
I'm currently serving as area director this year.
Yay.
And Lucia is the one who I reached out to when I needed some more information about it. So that's another huge benefit to Toastmasters is you have people who have been part of these leadership skills and roles where we're getting trained in positions in Toastmasters. As an officer, what officer roles have you taken on? Have you done every single one of the officer roles at this point?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
I've
okay.
done the president, the vice president of education, secretary, treasurer, and the area director. So I haven't done the vice president of public relations or membership.
Or
But
sergeant
I've
of
always,
arms.
I did that yes, because it was
Yeah.
at a time when we had a smallish leadership team. We didn't have a lot of things for the sergeant at arms to actually do because we were still meeting somewhat virtually in someone's house. And it was just, it's like it made sense to take on that role as well as another one I was doing at the time. Yeah. Yeah.
No, that's funny. I was in a meeting with the other area directors, and someone mentioned that their favorite time to be sergeant of arms was when they were meeting virtually.
I bet.
Right? There's essentially just click on the computer and you're ready to go.
Right.
So,
Right.
I thought that
That's
was so
great.
funny.
Yeah.
Okay. Lucia, thank you so much. I would love to get into more a deeper conversation about
Mhm.
the intuition and using your intuition or your gut to put together speeches, or whatever creative content that inspires you. I would love to get
Absolutely.
into a discussion in a future podcast. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for your time. My pleasure.
All right. Bye, everyone. And next week, we'll be doing another podcast on toast and tea. Good day and good evening.